York. For more, we're joined by Peirre Cannet of the World Wildlife Federation. Thank you for joining us here.
Hello.
The issue of the environment, the French president mentioned it in his speech. It barely got a mention in the U.S. president's speech on Tuesday. What are you hoping that this summit later in New York will achieve?
Well, this summit led by Emmanuel Macron, the French president, is indeed important as an impetus for mobilization of all stakeholders towards climate finance. Make sure that trillions are shifting towards climate and the energy transition. And so Emmanuel Macron has a leadership role to play. He has been there since his election on the global stage, making sure that the Paris Agreement is alive. And what does it mean? It means that all stakeholders need to take commitments to shift trillions towards climate action. And this is not done yet. We've seen last December in Paris a great mobilization from the finance sector, investors, things are moving on. But the problem is that President Macron gained legitimacy at the global level, global stage on that, but now he needs to gain credibility at the local domestic level.
Yeah, the domestic level, because we had the shock resignation last month of his very popular environment minister, who basically said he was tired of being overruled.
Indeed, and it is a signal that things are not happening as NGOs and WWF would wish in terms of greening France, making sure that the ecological transition in France is at pace on mobility, on energy. You know that actually this summer we also learned before that Minister Hulot left the government that France was not following its climate trajectory. So what was done after that? Was there any reaction from the government with a specific plan to address this ambition gap? Not yet. So we are calling WWF, thanks to this summit, making sure that President Macron can gain credibility with a grand budget. A green budget, this is a key commitment from the One Planet Summit last year.
Explain to us what a green budget is.
A green budget is actually that all resources, most of the resources that will be spent in the national budget will be dedicated to the energy and ecological transition, making sure that the fiscality of the country is helping the transition from the diesel and gasoline vehicles towards the electrical vehicles, making sure that infrastructures for biking are put in place, making sure that energy towards renewables and energy efficiency is at the level. And what we see in France, we are late in the transport sector with more and more emissions coming, with breaking records in the transport sector. We are seeing as well renovation pace not being at the level as well for buildings.
Just in the past days, the government saying it's going to institute a new tax on trucks. The last time the government backed down. Do you think they'll hold their nerve this time?
Well, we are waiting for this law to be presented regarding mobility. It's been 3 decades we have not been able in France to have a law on mobility. So we are really pushing to make sure that this law will be bold to shift exactly this transport.
But what are your expectations?
My expectation is that really the electric vehicles and low carbon solutions are pushed at the global level because it's a small share of vehicles. Concerning the freight is making sure that we also can shift towards train and making sure that, yes, we have a shift in infrastructures, for instance. Most of the billions dedicated to infrastructures are made toward the old mobility style, not towards the new mobility and ecological friendly transition mobility.
Peirre Cannet, before we let you go, let's go back to the international stage. Because before the end of the year, there's going to be a big UN summit where they're going to be talking about how you finance the curb on carbon emissions, in particular for developing countries. What are your expectations on that score?
Well, we know that countries committed to put and to go towards 100 billion for financing climate action in developing countries. We feel the tension in climate negotiations regarding the big gap we have currently on the money, the finance mobilized for climate and for developing countries, and actually the status quo in terms of shifting this money towards climate projects in developing countries. And so I'm sure that there will be a growing tensions towards the COP24 because countries are committing to perhaps more public spendings, but it's too little in comparison to the challenge. And there is one other milestone that we have to get in mind regarding finance, is the report that will be put in the table by IPCC, you know, this climate science body, UN science body, that will present the 1.5 degrees Celsius report, special report, on 8th of October. Is going to be critical because it means more finance for the most vulnerable, and so more resources to be mobilized by developed countries, and especially regarding adaptation, because it's unfortunately lost and completely lost in terms of amounts mobilized.
All right. Many thanks. Peirre Cannet of the World Wildlife Federation for coming into our studios.